Welcome everybody to another edition of the NORA Oil Tech Talk webinar. And tonight our special guest is John Dunleavey from Carlin Combustion and Hydrolevel. And I'm with Alan Mercurio of Oil Tech Talk. Thanks, John. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Quick question before we get in. How did you get into the industry and how did you get where you are?
Well, I kind of knew in high school towards, of course, junior, senior year, not in 8th grade when I should have attended a technical, vocational high school. And I have two great ones right near me. So I decided to pick HVAC because as we toured a couple trade schools, we went around to all these rooms and I kind of looked at it and said, wait a second, like the plumbing room was cool. The electrical room was cool. But then I went to this one room with HVAC where it had everything in there.
I was going to say, you got everything there.
You have everything. You're basically an electrician. You're a low voltage electrician. You're doing all the fun plumbing, not the waste pipe. Then you had to be a combustion engineer, refrigeration tech. So there's just so many cool things that, were in the HVAC department. And I decided in that moment I was going to go on the oil side. And I had a great company, like literally 5 minutes down the road called Seymour Oil. And one morning I ended up bumping into the service manager at a Dunkin' Donuts. And he knew me, from when I was in school. His son was a grade or two below me. And it was one of those things where he was like, oh, where are you going? What are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm going to Porter and Chester. And he's like, yeah, what are you doing? I go, HVAC. He goes, come see me when you get out. And that was it. So 18 years old, I was at Seymour Oil Company. The money was always there. The job security was always there. And as we've seen lately, it's very difficult. Like everyone's looking for techs. There's a shortage, and it's not just our trade. It's every other trade around us, from carpentry all the way to plumbing and electrical. So it's stuff out there. So it's good seeing these technical events, whether it was at NTech, and I know you have some, Bob, that you attend, and Alan, you as well, where you get to see the young kids coming up, and it's good to see, some youth coming in.
Yes. Bluetooth. What's going on with the Bluetooth on the 7200? Okay,
so everyone was noticing the Bluetooth sticker on the side of that control dating back to
I took it off years ago and was disappointed there was nothing in there.
Yeah, so in 2017, the control was enabled and ready to communicate. But in that very same time frame, we also had a lot of things we had to get done at the factory. We had, there was the B20 initiative, right, where we had to get everything up to get approval for B20. And as you know, with that, Bob, as soon as we got B20 done, the next initiative was, okay, we got to get it right to B100.
Yeah.
We have this great guy at the factory, Joe King, and I know Alan's met Joe quite a bit, and Bob, you might have too. So Joe tackled this project, and throughout the whole process here, he's been dealing with the outside developer that's looking in at what we've created, and then obviously our inside guys that are designing the module that will plug into the side of the control. So there's a lot to it. And what they do in the office is impressive. But the testing process here that kind of comes from the Hydrolevel side it's a very thorough process where there's quite a bit of time that goes into the R&D, and everything literally will get thrown at this. Any curveball, slider, knuckle that we can throw at this thing, and it has happened, right, where we're able to get this thing to swing and miss. And so it's like, okay, let's figure out why that happened. So there's been a lot of obstacles and stuff that they've had to overcome, especially like trying to design it yourself, and the app side of something, and then at that point, bringing in an outside agency to help, has helped kind of that teamwork in the office kind of get it together and figure this all out. But yeah, so we have showed it at some trade shows, from the Eastern Energy, to even the AHR. So the one thing that it's going to bring to you is you'll be able to program the control while the burner's in operation, right? That's one of the complaints that people have is, hey, I got to pull the TT jumper when there's a call for heat on it. And so now you'll be able to program it in the app, and then you'll save your settings, and it's going to ask you to hold the right arrow down. And as soon as you hold that right arrow down, what you just programmed in there on your app is now in the control. So if you choose to, you hit the reset and you can verify that, hey, that 10-second pre-purge I put in there is there, right? So there's a lot of cool things like 100 run cycles that you can get. I thought that was a little excessive, right? But the thing is, it allows you to choose. So if you want to choose to work 100 down to 1, you can. If I want to choose to work 10 into 1, where then after my 1 is where my fault occurred, maybe in that 10 cycle history leading into that fault, I could see where something maybe went sideways on the combustion, whether it's ohms or a component acting up. So the app is going to allow you to see cycle history. It's going to lay out your fault history too in like a block format, where currently on the control you have to hit the arrows, like the down arrow or up arrow, to scroll through that error message. So you'll be able to see that fault. Fault 1 is boom. This is all your readings. This is what your amperage draws were for all your components. So that's cool. But the thing about this control is there's been a lot of people that are worried saying, are you guys going to pull the screen? Because if you're putting this much money into the app, there has to be, you're going to take something away. And that's not going to happen. So this control launched 14 years ago, and it's had a screen on it its entire time, and it's going to stay that way. So the app will be an accessory to the control, not a necessity to it. So if you want it, great. If you don't want it, great. I still do recommend getting the app, so that way you can look at spec, right? So the spec for all your appliances, oil and gas and commercial, are going to be in there, so which is nice. And you'll have it you'll have it in your pocket. And but then again, there's people that, just like me, still understand the value of having paper. And I'm one of those. I'm old school, right? My hair,
You do have the gray hair, so
I like paper. Yep.
Okay.
So
it's a good question. Everybody's looking forward to it. I think everybody's looking forward to seeing the app.
So the other thing that we've changed the ignition sequence on the control, which initially kind of bugged a couple people out, right? Because we used to spark the igniter for 3 seconds, and then we'd bring the fan into play. And what we're doing now is the fan and the igniter come on. The igniter comes on for 1 second, and what we're doing is we're looking for a solenoid valve that happens to be bypassing in the pre-purge sequence. And we don't bring the igniter back into play until 1 second before trial for ignition. And the older software model would say valve on delay, because it technically wasn't a pre-purge with the igniter in circuit per UL. A pre-purge was deemed no ignition, right? Just fan only. So we can now call it a pre-purge, right? So, and we could call it, post-purge naturally. It always was a post-purge. So the ignition sequence changed. And a lot of people said, well, why did you do that? Well, throughout all this testing of biofuels, our lab engineer, Mike, happened to notice when he did this, he reduced the carbon deposits on the combustion head between like the 10 and 1 o'clock position. And so, hey, if there's a reduction in carbon deposits on the head of the burner, that's the bread and butter of where the magic happens. And we can prevent some of those retention veins from getting clogged up with something, and we can keep the air moving in the right direction, like keep a clean flame for 12 to 18 months. That's good, right? So there's a lot of really cool things that just come from just the testing that Mike does in our lab, right? Where the little intricacies, like something as simple as that, like just pulling the igniter out and bringing it right back in when you need it.
That's been a while, right?
Yeah, a little over a year now. That happened when we launched our B100, residential line. There's been so many ideas on this control in my 11 years here that came from the technicians, right? Which is really cool. Like when a technician says something to you, like, hey, can you give me constant duty intermittent ignition? Well, why? Like, why do we need that? Like, smart ignition's there if you need it. Well, there's this warm air furnace, and it's got a carrier tag on it or a Bryant or a Heil tag on it. And when you take the primary control off, there's a little flag on the wire saying do not hook the igniter to interrupted. And so in those applications, we have to put the igniter to the motor with your control, and we lose the amperage sensing capability that the control has. So if you just add that feature in there, we can keep the amp sensing, right? So we add that, and then I was in the front yard of a house where the technician was witnessing the slow death of a fuel pump, right? It was an install-only customer. He doesn't provide fuel, and there's high moisture content in the fuel. And a 6-month-old fuel pump was just rusted out internally. And so I told him how to figure out the sequence here, where it was going into a recycle, so it was making a fire in a run. You see it went into a recycle, and then the next time it cycled on, it went off on safety saying, check the motor. Didn't see the amp draw the motor. And he goes, well, that's really cool. He goes, so if you have the ability to tell me that no amperage is being pulled by a component, you have the ability to tell me too much amperage is being pulled. I was in Milford, Connecticut, and I drove about a half hour back to the factory. Talked to Joe King, and I said, Joe, what do you think? And we got John Conover, our software engineer, and we said, hey, can we do this? And literally 45 minutes later, he came with a 70200 with software that was flashed to look at the overamping. I jammed a screwdriver and a fan on a boiler in our classroom lab, and it went off saying high motor current present. So it is really cool that I was able to make a phone call saying, your idea has some legs. We're going to give it a while in testing, make sure we didn't put a bug in the software. And once it proves itself here, it's going to make its way into the control. So that's pretty cool that the technicians are, their voice means something. The constant evolution, right? Like the control's always changing. We're never resting on something. If we can add something to make your life in the basement better and get you out of there faster, we're gonna do our best, right?
Agreed. I mean, the new generation of controls, all of them, not just yours, but everybody. A huge boon for technicians to be able to get all that data to troubleshoot with.
Yeah.
One of the first ones I saw in the field, maybe 2018 or so. I didn't do it. A couple of guys worked for me, installed a boiler with a Carlin, and at first, I think it was the Pro Max then.
Yeah.
And summer, next morning, 6 o'clock, the guy's calling no hot water. I'm like, okay, this is a treat. I'm driving over there. I'm thinking about what it could be. And the screen says, check coil, check valve.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that'd be the last thing I would check. I mean, I would have gotten to it eventually, but not right off the bat. And I get the multimeter and I check it, and yeah, it's bad. And I got a new one, and 5 minutes later it's done and I'm on my way. As I'm driving away, I'm thinking that would have been 45 minutes to reach that. That would have been the last thing I checked. And I might
That's one of those ones where you sit there and you babysit it, right?
That would have been a tough call, and that really sold me on the whole concept that this is really a great idea. Even if you can get there, it's going to get you there in 5 minutes instead of an hour.
Yeah.
Because that's not a problem.
I say trust the control, right? If it tells me check coil, I would run the burner a little bit, right? Let it run, let the coil heat up, and then check your ohms. That 350 to 550 we're looking for. When we walk into a service call, everything's cold, right? Otherwise, why would we be there?
Oh, this guy the customer hit the reset. It started.
Yeah.
It was running when I got there.
I think the overall goal for this was it was intended to just basically eliminate the repeat call, because it's always difficult to bill a repeat, right? Or if you are billing on a repeat, you're probably deleting the first call because you didn't fix it. And if you replaced a component there, sometimes
I knew. Yeah, they don't want, if it didn't fix it, that you were wrong the first. They don't want to pay for anything.
I've had those service calls in my last job where I had this wonderful lady in my service department. Her name was Cindy, and she would do some service billing when she wasn't dispatching, when she wasn't busy all over the place with technicians. And she would come over to my desk and she'd have like 3 service tickets and say, which one of these do I bill? Right? And it's like, well, clearly the last one, right? We haven't been there in 3 weeks, and these ones here were within, 2 days. And then you look at the tickets and it's like all the parts, and it's like, wait a second. They basically have a chassis and an air tube that are original and a combustion assembly and a new motor, new pump. And it's usually something crazy like a pump coupling, or I had one plugged oil filter. You imagine that? Like you got 3 service calls in there, and finally a tech decides to look at the general 1A cartridge, and he pulls it out and it makes that noise.
Yeah.
Or he's prying it out with his screwdriver. So the overall goal, when you're an oil company or any service provider, if you're any service provider and you're giving service plans, the technicians sometimes, I think you guys may have all heard this, is, they got a service plan, they're not going to get charged for it. It's one thing we want to get away from. We want to have the tech stop firing the parts cannon at the equipment and target the problem and replace the problem and move along.
I mean, if you're a good troubleshooter, this control is going to help you. All of the modern diagnostic controls are huge.
I've been told that, early on when I came here, you guys are dumbing down the industry. I don't think so. I think what we're doing is we're giving you some diagnostics that put you in the right part of the field. So that way you can use your intelligence to diagnose, is what the control's telling you accurate? We still have to be technicians, it's going to help you with the electronics. It's going to push you in the right direction. And those electronics can sometimes be those ghost service calls that you repeat on. And the same people that will tell me that also have been installing gas warm air furnaces for the last 30 years. And I'm like, wait, doesn't that blower door have a little clear window that you could look through and see a blinking message? And now think about this. 25, 30 years ago, that message on the door, there was like maybe 8 or 9 lines of what you can look at. Now think about how big that legend is on that upper door. And now you have to, wait, was that 6 fast blinks and 2 slow? There's a lot of intelligence that a lot of the newer equipment's thrown at you. So I think when the ProMax was designed, I think they just looked at what the gas industry was already doing and just deciding to incorporate that into the oil side of the business. And
it was a huge jump forward.
It's amazing to think that control's going on 14 years, right?
Yeah, 2009
years. Yeah.
I think it's more than that. I think I saw it in 2009.
2011. Hold on.
Okay. I could be wrong. Time flies. It's a long time, either way you look at it.
Hold on.
Here he goes.
2011.
Okay. Well, you're the Carlin guy. There's a reason.
I got my notes, my cliff notes.
Only 14 years. It seems longer. I remember seeing the hydrostat in 2008 at the AHR show. The first one I saw was 2008 in New York City. Snowy day.
Yep.
Same thing.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yep.
I remember I was invited with OESP at the time to go to that. And I remember, I think the bus I would have been on got stuck on its way out back to Connecticut on 95 somewhere. And 3 young kids, which I still have. That was
that's 18 years ago, 17 years ago. That's been
went by too fast.
Another question, totally, not related, of course, but the easy one, the Select.
Yes.
Why'd you guys go to the Select, and how come the head bars are now
numbered
instead of firing rate, instead of nozzle size?
Okay. All right, so to hit on the Easy One Select question first. So the Easy One Select was basically derived out of the ability during the pandemic to basically give a comparable feel for what technicians would experience with a Riello, right? So there was a couple of manufacturers that run pretty heavy, with Riello, and, that we were happy to help give them something that was very similar, the 0 to 4 turbulator of a Riello to the percentage-based band. We kind of had the ability to basically put that 99-esque style slide. You don't get full rate of the burner. It's OEM specific. Can't be purchased burner in a box, adjustable flange. So it is an OEM specific application. And it just puts some flexibility. There's a couple of these product lines, the former Biazzi, now St. Rock line, the Granby Conforto line of furnace and boiler, the FWF Trio, where this burner can come out of the box and it could basically hit multiple appliances with one burner. And just by a simple twist of the 5/16 nut driver. So now we did buff off the scale with the grinder, so that way you can now see the scale. It's always been on the chassis, just covered by black powder coat. And we're showing you that path, the 0, the 1, the 2, and so on and so forth, all the way up the line. Now, it's a flexible little burner, and as the easy one is as well. But with biofuel, sometimes if you are in a higher blend, sometimes a little tertiary air can be your best friend, right? So with the Easy One Select, if you're in a 0.75 firing rate and you're set for number 2, which would be the former 7.5 head bar, and you got that little flame fluttering off the head a little bit, all you got to do is just turn on the 5/16 just a hair, and you watch your CAD cell ohms on the 70200 and say it's 1700, you turn it forward a little bit, and all of a sudden that fire sits right back on the head of the burner. The ohms drop significantly. The flame smooths right out. So that's one of my tricks, that I have for just a simple, easy one with a head bar, right? Where if that action is occurring, I'll just have them jump up into the next size bar. So this can happen with the Easy One Select without changing the head bar. It's just a simple movement forward. Now, the other side of that question, the numbers. When the Easy One came out in 1988, there was fudge factor that was built into this burner based on the 100 PSI and the 150 PSI applications that it was flowing in between. So you could have your Bach water heater, your Everhot Thermoflow that had a 7.5 nozzle in it, 100 PSI. And then you could also have a Weil McLean Gold that fired a 7.5 with 150. That head bar matched the nozzle regardless of pump pressure. And there was some fudge factor built into the position of the head for the proper primary, secondary, and tertiary air. So now when we look into the future of where we're going to be heading in the industry, obviously we know that just higher pump pressure is you get better atomization. So now we end up in a scenario where if I'm moving 165 or 175 psi, the fudge factor of the head bar is not built in anymore. Now we actually have to truly look at flow rate. So that 7.5 nozzle at a 165 is moving a higher GPM than a GPH than it was previously. So now we have to, that 0.75 head bar will now be a number 851 gallon, but so the number 2 would now be a number 3 head bar, right? So that's a lot, man.
I get it.
Yeah. I'm getting dizzy. We end up in a scenario where now we have to look at the true GPH, and we have to set the head in the appropriate location. So we thought that was, for us, we can take a product that, just because I work here, this was one of my favorite products previously in my former career. We could take a product that everyone's familiar with and friendly with. We could hit the static pressure of a triple pass cast iron boiler. In a lot of the direct vent applications as well, the Easy One can surpass the static needed to get the exhaust out. We can take that old friend and we could just put some little twists on it and bring it into the future, right? So, and I'm sure, there's a lot of people at the factory that know a lot more than me that, I'm sure that Easy One could do a lot more, in the future as well with maybe many other things that probably everyone's looking forward to. But yeah, our thought process was, let's just bring it into the future with a couple little twists. Right?
Yeah, it would be confusing if you had to use a 0.85 on a 0.75, right? So the numbers take that out.
Right. But sometimes that, that can be your best friend. There's been some service calls where I get on the phone and, like one of them recently was a 115.3 Badaris, and tech goes, yeah, I got this nozzle in it and it's like, it's been here for like 14 years and I don't know what's going on. It's every year it just gets a cleaning. He goes, and now I'm here, I'm servicing it. It's getting a little, like I'm getting this little flutter in the 5-inch draft regulator is just wobbling a little bit. And, I said, hey, take the Phillips head screw out of the head bar. And I said, just lightly take the end of your screwdriver and just tap it forward just a hair. And, the reaction on the other end of the phone line is instantaneous. Oh, yeah, my God, it quieted right down. The flame looks good. The CAD cell's low. So that's my trick there with some of it is just moving into that next size head bar. And always check the pump pressure, too, because there's some people out there, I've been on service calls with them that just start cranking that flathead screw in that pump.
And somebody asked me the other day, How many PSI is a quarter turn?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Well,
This was like
I couldn't tell you because I've never done it. I've never done it.
I forget what my answer was, but it was basically that. But like, yes, you actually need a pump pressure gauge. There's not a, you know, you know what? If you think about it, it's a valid question. I understand the, you know, where it comes from, but you know, there's no answer to that. You need a pressure gauge. But it's amazing. You're right. How many jobs you go into, and they'll have a litany of complaints. And then you go there, and it's, you know, it's 205 or it's, you know, 85, you know, and no one ever checked it.
I think you can get a Suntech 3006 up to, I heard like 220.
10% over the rating.
Yeah. I remember at my last job, I had a gentleman that, you know, worked, my company acquired his company, and great guy, great human being, gentle, kind person. He was a great guy. But I walked into a basement one day, and there he is working on a Weil McLean Gold, like 4 or 5 section. And he's got one flathead screwdriver holding the viewport door open and the other one in the pump, cranking it. No pump pressure gauge on it.
That's the combination analyzer pump pressure gauge.
And then I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I'm just, I put a 7.5 nozzle in here." I'm like, "You don't have I think it was like a gallon 25 that was needed." I said, you don't have that?" He goes, "No, 7.5 nozzle works and everything." What?
Just change pump pressure?
Yeah, blindly, just willy-nilly, just turning the screw. You're like, my God. Like, I said, we got to check this out. And this guy can make a 1959 Crane sunny day hum, right? And then a Weil McLean with a Carlin Beckett Riello, he literally was just cranking the pump pressure blindly. Just, that was the thing, you know. And then I started to notice that, yeah, he was buying quite an amount of 7.5 nozzles. So I kind of told my general manager, I said, we got a problem.
Cuts down on inventory.
Well, he was using the same amount of nozzles. They were just all the same size.
Yeah, you only have to carry one, right?
Yeah. he was and this was at a time when Hago was the dominant nozzle for us at wholesale. And it was one of those things where I kept noticing at Bell Simons in New Haven, he kept buying like a 10-pack of 7570 ES. And I'm like, I almost swore. I was like, oh my God, we gotta figure this out. Like, so the gentlemen at night that were working down in that area, New Haven, all the way out to like Old Saybrook, Clinton, were like, oh yeah, like 5-year-old boilers looking like they were 50 years old, 50-year-old boilers looking like they were 5 years old. It was odd, but he was a great guy. But yeah, he thought 7.5s worked and everything.
If you're not testing, you're guessing. It always comes back to that. And it's amazing how many people are guessing.
I still remember getting my first digital analyzer. It was a Testo like 327.
Alan has it. I sent it to him for his museum a couple of years ago.
Yeah, with the orange sleeve that you slide it in.
No, this is pre-Testo. This is like 1980.
No, this is like a toolbox.
Oh, okay.
Lin.
Lin. That's like the Lin analyzer.
Someone actually gave it to me. They bought it and something didn't work, and I liked it. It was cool, super cool. 1987, 6. And it was great up until the O2 sensor went. And then I think it was like $300 or $400 in 1986. Like, well, so much for that. We're not doing that anymore. And didn't use it for years. I sent it to Alan for his museum 3 or 4 years ago.
Probably one of the greatest things in this industry, next to C. Cole's Hydrolevel acquiring Carlin, is definitely everyone having digital analyzers in their vans now. If you have them, use them. If you use them properly, you're gonna have effortless work year after year when you're doing your maintenance. I hear people saying, "Oh yeah, it's great. I love your burner. I open up the top of that boiler, or I swing that door open, and it's just beautiful. It's like clean cast iron in there, and it ran 800 gallons through it this year." Like all the burners are going to run properly when you're setting them up properly. And so some of the best things that have happened is we're getting really good quality fuel, ultra low sulfur, bio. We're getting bio added in there, and then we're getting just proper setup of all the burners. Because improperly set up, the burners aren't going to be any good. So I think just the education that the techs have now and the tools that we're using are far greater than the old wet kits. The wet kits got you there, but definitely when you're getting all this information about what's happening with your fire, and you could see action and reaction, that's awesome.
It's like watching a video versus looking at a snapshot, looking at a Kodak from 1982.
The one thing I like to do with a few of the younger techs when I'm in a basement with them on a service call is I'll watch them perform a combustion test. And I'll see what they do and how they maneuver their way through it. And I'll let them get to the point where they print it. And I'll say, hey, what's your draft? Oh, I don't know. Hold on, let me check. So they check the draft. Oh, -06. Oh, I better adjust that regulator.
Changes everything else.
Yeah. And so that's a little science project I like doing with them. I'm like, okay, put your analyzer back in there now that you just adjusted the draft. And I said, now see what happened to your combustion. Oh, no, it should be fine. It should be the same. I'm like, no. When you go from an 06 to like an 03, -03, even though you got that fan spinning at 3450 RPM in that chassis, you've now taken some air away from it. And they're like, no. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you had an 11.8 when you just printed before, and look at that now. You got a 12.4.
See the same thing with air boxes. Guys do the same thing. They'll adjust it, burn it as an air box. They'll adjust it with it off and pop the box on. And it's, you can get quite a shift.
Yeah, energy kinetics, you want to adjust with the box on. You make an adjustment, you put the box back on, right? You Riello, you got a box on, put it back on, right? Plus, the last thing you want is if that insulation came loose on the Riello on the right, you don't want that getting sucked into the air shutter. Even my burner with the cover kit on it, if it's got a cover kit on it, put the box on it, put the cover on, and just see what happens once that goes on. I know Scott kind of went, on his time with you guys, he talked about combustion air, and Scott and I talk about this a lot. Scott,
it's a major factor.
Scott and I went on some service calls together, and he's a great guy, but we went on some service calls where we both, he's just like me. We both spring to action. Let's get to this job. Let's go look at it. And when you go to grab the door handle and the door gets sucked out of your hand and slammed shut, that's pretty intense, right? When you got daylight around the exhaust pipe to the outside and the equipment's in a room, and it's pulling air from that room, return air included, and it's pulling the exhaust right down out of the flue into that room. But then I know in New England, where I am, in Connecticut, we have the Energize CT, there's mass saves, and a lot of the other states here in New England have the same thing going on, where you can get this energy audit to happen at your house, and you can get windows and insulation, and you can even get AC equipment, mini split heat equipment. And they will literally come in your house and just start caulking everything up, and they will spray foam everything. And houses are choking, There's a new house going up in my neighborhood, and I'm watching all the zip board go up, and I'm seeing there's always that, the kid, he's following the framers and he's just taping up the seams, and house isn't going to breathe, right? So there's a lot of obstacles we're up against as service techs, and it's not just oil service techs. It's going to be the guys that are doing gas too. And the nice thing about oil is that if there's a problem with the house breathing, and its natural instinct is to pull down the chimney, right? Because path of least resistance. At least we could smell the oil combustion, A friend of mine built a house, and same thing. He put in this 6-foot wide Viking stove, 10-inch round hood off the, pipe off this hood. And I said to my buddy Jeff, I said, Jeff, you're going to need air. Oh, what do you mean? You're going to need air. I promise you. Oh, I got all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm putting fresh air on the burner. It's going to be fine. Oh, it's not the burner we're worried about. We're worried about your exhaust pipe. When you pull out, you're going to be pulling, exhaust down that pipe. First cold day in November, and he's running that hood, making breakfast for his kids. Called me up, says, yeah, you weren't right. What do I, you were right. What do I do? The easy fix at that moment was, well, let me check your draft and let's remove your draft regulator, but we got to do something here. And I showed him too that when his hood was running in his kitchen, I threw a Kleenex down next to the basement door, and it pulled the Kleenex towards the range.
No, it's amazing the amount of air those things pull.
So combustion air is a problem, and so that's something that, we have to look at as technicians. But the houses aren't breathing like they once did. I used to find comfort and solace in the fact that my single pane Anderson window, or when it was wintertime at night, I could feel the cold breeze coming by my neck as I sat at the couch. Nowadays, even my house doesn't breathe. So I have combustion air coming into my burner. So I'm making all the right moves here.
That problem.
No one thinks about the clothes dryer either. The clothes dryer can move 200 to 300 CFM.
The newer, higher efficient ones are even more.
Yeah. So, hey, look, if you could take every towel in your linen closet and throw it in your wash machine and put it in your dryer, and they claim in 30 minutes they can have that complete stack of towels dry, it's moving a lot of air.
There.
And they are not required to bring in what they're removing, right? There's no code on that yet.
It's got to come from somewhere.
So where's it coming from?
Yeah.
Anywhere it can get it, right? Yeah. If your chimney happens to be one of them, that's where you're gonna get it. So
that's gonna get worse and worse as codes get tighter and tighter. Construction, and it's gonna be an ongoing problem. Which brings me to another question: the cap.
Yes, we got that plaque right here on the wall.
Okay.
So that came out.
Pardon me.
The idea came up in 2016. Working prototype was handed over, and this is going to do it. This is going to work. This is going to satisfy code. 3 years of testing, right? That just comes from that Hydrolevel side where we're going to throw everything at this that we possibly can. The winters in Connecticut aren't what they once were when I was growing up, so we had to simulate, some really cold weather. So we rented a carrier container that would go on like a big shipping container. I believe also we did I think NORA gave us some information from the 60s on CO2 to air temperature.
Yep.
Luckily, all that data came back correct. So nothing has changed drastically in our atmosphere since the 60s. So that's a good thing. So we were able to basically test down to minus 44 on the inlet side. So much, it was so cold where we had frost growing on the fuel pumps, right?
I've seen pictures of that in Alaska.
So we've done, a bit of work with that, just trying to get it, to where we were comfortable launching it. And almost everything we do, we don't want to give you a problem in the basement. So there's a lot of effort and thought that goes into it. And, so it was just beaten. Some of my people that knew about it were like, when can I get it? When can I get it? I'm like, probably not for another year. Oh, you're kidding me, But it was just one of those things. Before you get it in your hand, it's going to work. And we launched that at the Eastern Energy Expo in Hershey in 2019. And I think that was last year we were in Hershey.
Yeah.
So we launched that in May of 2019. It's been doing well. You can run up to 80 feet of pipe, whether it's PVC 3-inch or 4-inch galvanized. Some people, they have stacks of 5-footers of 4-inch, at their office, and so some people wanted to still have that 4-inch, availability to use it. So there's a rubber grommet on top that receives the 3-inch PVC. If you flip it over, it takes the 4-inch galvanized. We have 3 pressure switches internally, so when you block the exterior, your pressure switch basically opens. It disconnects contact to the block vent circuit of the 70200. It's going to try 3 times too, right? We're not going to give you like a one hit and you're off on a hard lockout. If any debris happens to be moving through the yard, we're going to make sure that if something does get sucked to the air intake, that we shut off, recycle, and maybe during that time frame the vacuum subsides, the debris that hit now drops and falls to the ground, the wind takes it away, and we can come back on. So 3 consecutive, block vent strikes on the 70200, it will go off and say you have a blocked intake, which satisfies the code. So that came from just the process of me and my former career doing a lot of installations where I looked at what we were trying to do, make the home more efficient, right? And if we were doing an oil to gas conversion, which my company did do as a propane dealer, I was able to bring the fresh air into the equipment on everything,
Sure.
right? All hung boiler to a warm air furnace. And so the thought was always there, like, how come we can't do this with oil? And air boots became a thing where we weren't allowed to use them. They didn't match code for NFPA 31 because code wanted the mechanical means of shutting off an oil burner on a blockage. And the air boot had the VRV on the T that would open and basically allow air to come into that burner from the space that you deemed inadequate
in the first place.
I'm sure the insurance companies had a field day with that. Like, wait a second, like that's probably why these things became a code, right? They all originate somewhere. So I had a lot of air boots as well in my former career. That the coldest night of the year, what were you doing? You were at that house, right? Me, when I was a tech, I liked 11.5% CO2. So on any given day, if I set that burner up to 11.5%, all of a sudden you get a 0 degree night, which doesn't happen as often as it once did. You lose flame retention. And you probably had a lot of really legit service calls that you had to do because it was that temperature out. And now you're in a basement dealing with fresh air. So I hear a lot of techs say, oh, yeah, well, those houses with the air boots, I tell the homeowner over the phone, just take the air off and put it back on Sunday when it's 50 degrees. Everything we preach, or I preach in a training class, is CYA. It's, never instruct someone to do that over the phone, never do it yourself. If fresh air is on an appliance, it's there for a reason. Measurements were taken. Someone just doesn't put it on something because they want to. So you have to look at the surroundings and say, is this a tight space? Okay, yeah. We're in a laundry room of a raised ranch, and we're in a tight space. And so do not remove that fresh air pipe. So I try to teach how to adjust that burner with the air temperature, right? So I have a chart that comes in handy where 12% at 65 plus degrees out with a zero smoke, first and foremost, zero always. That CO2 is going to drift with air temperature. So you get down to that 0 to minus 20, the CO2 is going to be 10.2%. So,
John, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if I'm not mistaken, you guys even provide, I think it might be the same chart you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you purchase that cap system, it's in the instructions, so it's right there for the guy at the tech to use.
And there's a lot of stress I put on using that chart in the other direction. You're there on that cold January, February night. Do not try to achieve a 12% CO2 with a 0 degree or 10 degree wet air coming in. Follow the chart, because in true fashion, what happens? Like February 3rd and 4th of 2023, it was minus 20. All right. And Alan, I'm pretty sure you got that Arctic blast too in Pennsylvania. And Bob, I know you definitely got it.
It didn't last very long though.
Right. February 3rd and 4th, minus 20 with the wind. And on the 5th, it was 50 degrees. So some people that had adjusted a burner to 12% with a 0 coming in, that very Sunday, they saw that CO2 jump to a 13.5%, 14%, making smoke. So a lot of emphasis on basically following all those guidelines for air temperature and your CO2 setup in that weather, both, cold and warmer, following it. And it will eliminate you from going in that basement on that really cold night.
Yeah, it's been a great product.
Yeah.
But,
so, Northern, don't mean to cut you off there, Bob, but Northern Boiler just wanted to also he's agreeing with us that he says he sees that problem a lot the technicians have with the EK boilers and their direct air intake. So, I think a lot of the guys have kind of caught on to, what you have to be careful of and watching for when we're doing that.
Yeah, when you're making adjustments on an EK, make sure you're putting the cover. Any movement of the band or the shutter of any burner on an EK, make sure you put the cover back on, keep your analyzer in, and make sure you're staying in line with their tolerances of CO2 that they want you to have.
Amen.
Absolutely. I got one more question for you. The B100 ratings. So the whole line is rated?
Everything from residential right through commercial up to 35 gallons an hour with the 1150.
Okay.
Yeah. That was we basically had that. I think it was August of 24. We had the UL list for the chassis, combustion heads, air tubes, all that stuff. In true fashion, like we hold that close, and the heart and soul of that product is the pump. right? If the pump doesn't have UL listing, you really don't have a true UL B100 product. So we held on to that information until basically Suntech was able to provide us with all the commercial pumps that we require for our product line. So yeah, we launched the UL B100 commercial. Now, granted, I don't really know anyone that's really pushing the limits of higher blends in the commercial application, but I know there might be some B20 in New York City. In New England, I'm not really seeing too much of a high blend in the commercial side of the business. We're there. So if anyone does decide to up their blend over 20%, our burners and our fuel units that are on our product are UL listed to it.
No, it's great. It's future proof.
So
just because you're not doing it today,
it's
not going to do it in 5 years.
What you put in today helps you for maybe 5 years from now.
Yeah, Connecticut's going to B20 in 2030 and B50 in 2035, which sounds a long time from now, but it's really not.
The way things are moving, I've been here 11 years. That was the fastest 11 years of my life.
It goes quick. I mean, when they said the 20, we just had to move in Connecticut to B10 in New York and B10, and when it said 2025, I think they announced in 2018. That seemed like forever, and here we are. So the 2030 mandate's going to be here before you know it. So I think it's a great idea.
Don't blink. Don't blink. It'll be 2030. Don't blink.
Another thing you mentioned before about the two best things, one of them being the Hydrolevel team taking over Carlin. I can absolutely
Paul's Hydrolevel team acquiring Carlin.
Agree with that. Having a healthy Carlin is vital to the industry, and I think a lot of people were nervous, and the Hydrolevel team and they've just really done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I have two great manufacturers I wake up every day to compete against, and I know every day, especially with Beckett, there's a lot on the street in New England for me. I got a great guy in Scott Seavey, Alan Warnham, and Mary Hall. There's a great team of people there. So I'm a competitive person, and I wake up every day knowing that, hey, look, I got to go out and try to do better than these guys, on a daily basis. And Tagman from Low in my territory, he's doing great things. He's doing trainings at his facility, which is great for Riello. It's good to have, everyone running on all cylinders. And, so we're out here all just doing our thing, grinding it out. And
it's good for everybody, including, for Beckett. It's good for everybody to have competition,
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic job with Carlin, though, when that management team took over 15 years ago, whenever it was.
If I had to wake up, if I had to wake up every day and I didn't have any competition, and I just was able to just sit here and just use the phone every once in a while, why? That wouldn't be any fun. So
you wouldn't be going out on Christmas morning, would you?
No, I wouldn't have to, because I own the market, right?
It keeps everybody honest.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of great things about having three healthy, burner manufacturers out there, and I'm hoping that stays the way it is for a long time to come. I hope oil. Look, I want to retire with oil. I don't want it going away in my time. I don't think I want to see myself kneeling down in front of a mini split at 2 a.m. helping someone replace a circuit board or something like that. I'm an oil guy, gas power burner guy. I hope we got to, and I know we do.
I think you're safe.
We'll make our way there.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. John, thank you for being here this evening.
Bob,
Really
Alan,
appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
We'll see you next month. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. See you, everyone.